Fantastic to see everyone here this morning. Really great turnout. So it's a real credit to our keynote speaker here today. So my name's Mary Ramsay. I'm Head of Partnerships and Innovation here at Stony Chalk. Just in terms of what we do, we opened our doors about 4 years ago as the home of fintech, centre of gravity for fintech. In those 4 years, as the fintech industry itself has exploded over sevenfold, so have we. So we're still very much fintech at the heart of what we do. We now have 3 locations across Australia, Melbourne and Adelaide, just opening in October, for those of you who don't know that. In Adelaide, we'll be focusing on defence and space, and in Melbourne, we also will be focusing on agtech, medtech, as well as nationally fintech. So what we do is we're home to 800 entrepreneurs. We have about 190 different startups. We have 20-odd corporate partners. Well, they're not odd, they're great corporate partners. And our differentiation between co-working spaces and what we do is really that we're not for profit and we focus on commercialisation. And how we do that is we highly curate the startups that come in, and they are later stage startups that can plug straight into the corporate partners offering. So that's really the differentiator, and what we do for our startups is offer services around capital, customers, talent, expertise, and the community, so things like today. The other fun fact we've got is we've just launched Stony Chalk Academy, so taking basically what we do in education a step further, open to public and also corporate employees transitioning out of corporate, as well as those wanting to upskill and reskill. So that's really it from today. I'll be around if you want to know any more about Stony Chalk Platter. It's about you guys today, and here to sort of listen to Anthony Thompson, who is not your average expert in finance and fintech. He's a marketer by background, and Anthony has developed a flair for disrupting traditional banking systems. He's founded 2 banks in the UK, Metro Bank, the UK's first new bank in 150 years, and Atom Bank, UK's first bank for mobile. Anthony has served as Goldman's Visiting Professor for Innovation and Enterprise at Newcastle's Business School and Visiting Professor at London Metropolitan University. He has also co-authored a book, no small change, Why Financial Services Needs Better Marketing. And now as the chairman of aspiring bank 86400, Anthony brings his extensive experience in the financial services industry and a hunger to shake up the banking landscape in the Australian market. So fantastic to have Anthony aboard. Today we're going to hear from him about his lessons over the 30 years experience he's had. He's also going to talk about the 6 questions you need to ask yourself to determine if you have what it takes to grow a successful business. So that's going to be super interesting. And also what professional investors are looking for in a business and how to source capital, which is a question we get asked all the time. So Anthony, over to you.
Don't believe anything that I show you, and about half of what I tell you. I've raised some money over the last 11 years. I've raised about $1 billion. I've built some businesses. So my first business, City Financial Marketing, was Europe's biggest marketing agency, which I sold to Publicis. The Financial Services Forum was European-wide network of financial services people, which was sold to a major publishing group. Metro Bank IPO'd, some of you might be aware of that. Atom Bank will be bought by its biggest single shareholder. And ELA, I'm on the board of a bank in the Middle East called ELA. And of course, some of you will know a great team of guys who have launched this great bank called 86400, which I have the honour to chair. Right, some good news and some bad news. So the good news is you can raise money. Over 11 years, I've raised just over $1 billion. The bad news is it was all fucking hard. Raising money is not easy, with the exception of $10 million, where I walked into a meeting with, some of you might have heard of Neil Woodford, who's a star investor in the UK, and did the pitch, and at the end of it he goes, how much money are you looking for? And I said, well, from you, £10 million, about $16 million. He goes, may I invest it? I went, yes, you may. And that's the only time it's ever happened. All the rest of it's been really, really, really difficult. I do quite a lot of things like this, mainly for schools or universities, for young would-be entrepreneurs, people in schools or people in universities. And I get asked the same questions wherever I go. And I've done this in many different countries. And the the questions are always broadly the same, which is, is there a secret to building a business? Is there a kind of perfect background to have to building a business, Is it about your education? Is it about your family finances? Is there some other key driver? And the answer is no, according to the research I've done so far. And that's usually followed by, how do I raise money for my brilliant idea? Then it's, are there any common characteristics among successful entrepreneurs? And yes, there do appear to be a couple which I'm going to share with you, but as I say, it doesn't appear to be about background or about education or about whether you have money or your family has money or whatever. There is something separate which we'll come on to. And is there anything we can learn from that? And I think there are some common traits which are starting to emerge from the research, which I want to share with you. I suppose the question is, what makes some entrepreneurs really good at raising money and some aren't? What's this differentiator? And it really comes down to 6 questions. And these questions came from a whole bunch of people that I interviewed from all walks of life, because one of the things that I thought and the researchers has supported is, it doesn't matter whether you're young or you're old, whether you're male or whether you're female, whether you're black, white, of color, homosexual, heterosexual, gender fluid, those things don't matter in the ability to build a successful business. So I talked to a whole bunch of people. So you go, first one was a former supermodel. It's a tough job. Somebody had to do it. But what made her really interesting is she was making a lot of money, a couple of $1 million a year as a supermodel, developed a really severe substance abuse problem. Her husband left her. She had a young daughter and a very, very big mortgage and suddenly a very uncertain income. And she goes, how have I got to change my life? And one of the things she did was she sold her entire wardrobe, everything she'd made that she'd been given for wearing for 15 years, and made her 10-year-old daughter sell her wardrobe as well. There's a great ex-professional rugby player, a guy called Alistair Luckies, had a very successful career, came from a gentleman farming family. This is back in the 80s, they had about $5 million in cash, owned their own huge family farm. He went back for a family meeting to discover his dad had invested as a name at Lloyd's in London. Some of you might know the Lloyd's Insurance Syndicate. It's unlimited liability. And when it failed, he lost everything. He lost the farm, all of the money, destroyed the family broke up. There was a 71-year-old engineer called Richard Noble. And Richard Noble had the passion in his life was speed and to break the land speed record. So he built a rocket-powered car. And these are not the rockets that you see going off the bridge on New Year's Eve. This was a serious rocket-powered car. A psychology professor, really interesting guy, whose entire motivation was driven by the fact that his fiancée died in a car crash. A guy who had 3 young kids and was suddenly made redundant, had no money. One of 3 hungover flatmates. This might resonate with a few of you. So Sunday morning, 3 of them had all been to university together. They were all working, sharing a house. Woke up a bit worse for wear one Sunday morning and said, there's got to be something to make us feel better. So they invented this fruit smoothie. They called the company Innocent, and they sold it to Coca-Cola for $500 million. And I've talked to quite a few people on the venture capital side, private equity, venture capital, and others. But the thing that made this guy really interesting was he started his own business. And you'd think, if anybody knows how to do it, somebody in private equity would know how to do it well. And he completely fucked it up. So the stories are not about people who go, look, wow, just look how incredibly successful I've been. They're people who've had real ups and downs on their journey. And what I want to share with you is some of the things I've learned from them. This is the first one. How many of you are entrepreneurs? Probably about a third of you. How many of you would like to be entrepreneurs? A few, okay? So what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Well, all the good things about, it's great to have your own business, to be master of your own destiny, to control your own future. But there are some real downsides that go with this. And I've been in this position, and I'm sure some of you will, and we'll share this in a minute, where I've got, in my earlier career, got to Thursday and thought, if somebody doesn't pay that outstanding invoice tomorrow, I don't have enough money to pay the people who work in the business. Has anybody been in that situation? It's not very nice, is it? I mean, I don't know about you, I don't sleep when that's happening. I feel really shit. And you're thinking the next one, is this money going to come in? And you can go for weeks and you can go for months like this. It is having to recruit people in good times, and it's having to let really great people go in bad times. People who, through no fault of their own, no lack of effort on their behalf, the business isn't working and you have to reduce your cost base. Being an entrepreneur can be a very, very uncomfortable place. And I don't think everybody is cut out to be entrepreneurs. And I think that's a good thing. But I think you have to be really clear and honest with yourself when you are looking to start a business to say, do I want to do that? Am I the kind of person who will mortgage my house, who will max out my credit cards, who will borrow money from my family to follow a belief that I have to do something, that I will literally beg, borrow, and steal to keep going? There is a great woman here called Fee Bendel. Does any of you know Fee Bendel? Runs the Women's Network. She's a great, great lady. She was telling me when she started out that she had no money. And when I say no money, she would go on a Thursday to Pizza Hut with her 3 kids, feed the kids on a pizza, and then steal salad from the salad bar, because she took those little plastic Tupperware bowls, to feed them for the next 2 days, because she just had no money. And this is what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody wants to do that. Chris Knudsen, who I referred to, the psychologist, he sort of bootstrapped his business. He got up to 7 people. End of the month, he didn't have enough money. He was 5 people, then he was 4 people, then he was 6 people. Then he gave up working as a psychologist, took a 400 square foot office for 7 people. Couldn't afford the office, so they moved into a hotel reception without telling the hotel. And were thrown out for stealing croissants from the. So this is what it's like. It's not all about flying around in jets and living a great lifestyle. So that's the first question you need to ask yourself and answer absolutely truthfully. Second one is, what's the big idea? What's your big idea? For us and the guys I work with, the question you ask is, what is the customer problem we are trying to solve here? What is the customer problem, firstly? Secondly, is there a big enough universe of people for it? Because if I had $1 for every time somebody had presented me this brilliant solution to a problem that nobody has, I'd be a wealthy man. In fact, I should do that. Anyway, somebody goes, I have this brilliant idea for an app for somebody who will babysit your goldfish when you go on holiday. You go, yeah, it's a great solution to a problem that nobody has. So what is the problem, the customer problem that you are solving? And the likelihood is somebody else is already solving that problem. So how are you going to solve it better, faster, or cheaper than the person who's in the market? And you'll all be familiar with it, the 10x theory. So it's not enough to be a bit better than what's out there, or a bit faster, or a bit cheaper. You've generally got to have a multiple of 10 to sufficiently differentiate you from the other people that are doing it. Do you have a plan? Now, the interesting thing is, how many have been to business school? Did they teach you to write business plans? Yeah. So for the rest of us, nobody has taught us how to write a business plan. What is a business plan? What should be in it? John Moulton, who's a great investor in the UK, who's contributed a lot, said the longest business plan he was presented with by a prospective investee, person looking for money, was, would you like to have a guess, in pages? Hundreds? 200? I have 200 here. Do I have any advance on 200? I have 1,000 here. Do I have it? It was 1,100. Surprisingly, he didn't read it. Chris Knudsen had no idea how to write a business plan. He thought it was like his doctoral thesis. So he wrote the equivalent of a doctoral thesis. Because nobody teaches you how to write business plans. So, what should be in the plan? We need some help on how to do this. The best business plan I ever saw was Michael Dell's, which comprised 2 slides. And slide 1 said, build computer, sell computer. And the second slide said, sell computer, build computer. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So, do you actually have a clear, concise, working plan for what it is that you want to do? And before you present it to a prospective investor, you should really be stress testing this on pretty much everybody you know, and ideally the most cynical people you can find before you actually take it out, as it were, into the real world. I've been quite fortunate over the last couple of decades, and I've moved from building businesses to actually investing in some. And a number of people that I've talked to do the same thing. So they have built successful businesses, and they now use the proceeds of that to invest in other businesses. So these are people who know what it is like to be an entrepreneur, who know what it's like to start with those sleepless nights and those difficult days. And the question they either ask you tacitly or overtly is, why should I invest in you? Closely followed by, what's your skin in the game? So far too many people go, I've got this brilliant idea and I'd like you to put up 100% of the money. And I go, yeah, and when it all goes wrong, I lose 100% of the money. What do you lose? So investors want to see people have some skin in the game. Now, it's great if that can be money, because we want, as investors, we want you to share that pain if things don't work out. But it can be other things. It can be the fact that you've left your paid employment and spent a year funding yourself to build out your business idea and to get it to market, or to get the plan to market. But we want to see something, some commitment from you, that if it all goes wrong, then there will be a pain for you. Our pain is just money. We want to see something in it for you. Ideally money, but it can be other things. It can be investment of time, investment of effort. But so many times people come and go, well, as soon as you put this money in, we'll give up our jobs. And then we'll take your money. And I go, well, you're just moving from one paid employment to another paid employment. What is your commitment to seeing this business work? And I did a kind of early version of this in Brisbane and said, what's the longest anybody's gone without being paid? How long have you gone without being paid? Those of you who set up your own business. 3 months, anybody gone? 3 months? 6 months? 9 months? 12 months? 18 months? 2 years? Wow, I mean, people here have gone 2 years without an income, I guess because of your belief in your business. Any advance on 2 years? 3 years? Any advance on 3 years? 5 years? Any advance on 5 years? 4 years, 5 years, and this was not, you didn't get an income because you were in prison. This is exactly what investors are looking for. We want to go, people who have the passion and commitment to their business that, and I'm obviously not speaking about you because I don't know your circumstances, but people who might not have capital, but who are willing to live on virtually nothing, beg, borrow, and steal what they need to fund their business. And that's really attractive to prospective investors for reasons that we'll come to in a minute. Bit of a spoiler alert. Generally, businesses have tough periods. And we were talking about this in the office yesterday. Please say things are going really well at the moment. But I was saying to the guys, we'll have good days and we'll have bad days. We'll have good weeks and we'll have bad weeks. We'll have good months, we'll have bad months. We might have good years and we might have bad years. But things will get tough at some point for most people. And a little anecdote from my experience, we were trying to raise the money for Metro Bank. Metro Bank was the first new high street bank in the UK for 150 years. And its traditional money sources of money went, you want to start a one-branch bank to take on the big high street banks, the UK equivalent of the big four here? We went, yeah, that's what we want to do. And so you're crazy. So couldn't raise any money in the UK. We're looking to raise $100 million. And couldn't get any traction in the UK. So we went to America. And how many of you have done investor roadshows? Yeah, a few of you. They're unrelentingly horrible. You do 4, 5, 6 meetings a day over 5, 10, 15 days in various different geographical places. And I don't know, those of you who've done it, for me the hardest thing is, well, two things. First is, you say something, you go, have I said that, or did I say it 2 meetings ago in Chicago? Because you're saying the same thing over and over again. And the thing that's probably harder than that is my colleague Travis, with whom I'm presenting on our roadshows. And the hardest thing is when I'm hearing him present for the 7th time, telling the same joke for the 7th time, laughing like it's the first time I've heard it. And he has the same problem with me, except my jokes aren't, as you've discovered, as funny. Anyway, so I digress. Looking to raise $100 million, couldn't get any traction in the UK, go to the US, doing 5, 8 meetings a day between Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Connecticut, and Boston, up the East Coast. But of course, the people with the money don't see you in that order. They'll see you in the order that they want to see you. So you might start in Philadelphia in the morning, be in New York at lunchtime, go to Boston in the afternoon, have to come back to a meeting in Connecticut, because you just got to see them when they will see you. It's really, really tough. Anyway, over 3 weeks of doing this, we get commitments to $116 million. So if you remember, I was looking for $100 million. We get commitments to $116 million. Finish in New York on the Friday night. I was then living in the UK, so I fly home from New York to UK, get a free upgrade from British Airways, hitherto unknown. So I'm sitting there having a glass of champagne thinking, here, we've done this. We've raised the money. We're going to build this bank. And my joke is I get home on the Saturday morning, I tell my wife, she goes out to spend the money. And on the Monday, Lehman Brothers went bust. And of the $116 million we had committed, $65 million disappeared on the Monday. By the Friday, all the money had gone. And we'd spent a better part of 18 months getting to this stage. Have the money, and it's all gone. And people say to me, you've had some success. What's the secret of any success you have? And I generally go, I get up in the mornings and I go to work. And I go, well, it's not much of a secret. I go, well, that morning on Monday, September the 8th, 1987, was a pretty tough morning to get up and go to work. Yeah, it would have just been nicer to stay under the duvet. But one of the things that the research has told me is that the people who succeed are the ones who keep going when things get tough. Innocent Smoothies was a massive business. It was turning over 600 million. These three guys, remember I mentioned earlier, had started in a shared house, built this massive business, and on Thursday night they get all of their product was made by a factory in Wales. And on Thursday night they get a call from the managing director of the factory saying, sorry to tell you, this is the last batch of innocent smoothies we're going to make because our factory is closing down tomorrow. We've run out of money. You know, shit happens. People have some really, really tough times, which I won't dwell upon at the moment, but you kind of get the sense of it. Things will get tough. What will you do when things get tough? Have you the nature to want to deal with situations like that? You know, it's a bit like, do you want to be an entrepreneur? Because this stuff happens. How are you going to deal with it? This one kind of surprised me because I hadn't thought about this till I started talking to prospective entrepreneurs. But they're going, the thing that underpins this is, why are you doing this? Why have you started your business? I go, well, you know, why did I start the business? And interestingly, for most people, it turns out it's not about the money. For most people, it's something about independence. It's about being their own boss, about being in control of their own destiny. Money kind of comes into it because, you know, as we're seeing, as the world is changing, there are very few jobs that are absolutely secure for life. And a lot of people are saying, I don't want my future security to depend upon another company. I want to take responsibility for that myself. So is it about security? There's nothing wrong with making money. You know, I'm not a communist. I'm all in favor of making money. Personally, I happen to believe that profit is a byproduct of doing something well for the customer. If you give the customer a better product or a better service or a better experience, and you manage your business well, you will be profitable. And I think one of the great malaise in the big banks I've seen in the UK, I see it here, is they've lost sight of the customer. They just think they're in business to make money. And I don't think that's a good reason to start a business. I think you have to be passionate about your product or your service or your experience. And if you manage your business well, you will be profitable. And you know, back to my other point, but this is how I make my money. If I had $1 for every person who told me we're going to IPO this business in 3 years, again, I wouldn't need to work again. Because everybody says, I'm going to IPO the business in 3 years. And go, why? Are you building this business to hand on to your family? Is it about security? For me, a lot of it's about building a monument. It's not about the money. It's about building something that my kids can look at and go, my dad was part of that. That's pretty cool. So what is your exit strategy? Why are you doing this? Is it to IPO? Is it to trade sale? Is it to keep the business forever? Is it to hand on to your family? Because the answer to that question will shape an awful lot of the things that you do in the building and the design and the structuring of your business going forward. So just a couple of minutes on what investors look for. And again, this has come from talking to people who are investors, from angel investors, through small VC, through medium cap, through large cap, through PE, and public markets investors. So broad range, but they're broadly looking for the same things. And here's just what some of the key ones are. First one is, generally people don't like a business which is one person. They like to see a team. So it doesn't matter how good your idea is, how good you are as an individual, the likelihood is you are not going to be great at everything. So they want to see that you are surrounded by people who fill in the gaps that you have. If you're not from a finance background, you need somebody with a really strong finance background. If you're not a salesperson, you need someone who has those sales skills, experience, and expertise. And they take more comfort when that group of people have worked together previously. So you can just start with a whole new team and say, first time we worked together. But there's always the danger of it's not going to work out amongst the individuals. So having some experience of people who have worked together adds a lot of value to the prospective investor. Second thing is they want absolute subject matter mastery. They do not want to ask a question that one of the team presenting to them cannot answer in great detail. They want you to know about your market. And one of the general observations that they have made is that most people underestimate the competition in their market. They just go, our product is so good, you don't need to worry about anybody else. They go, well, we do worry about everybody else. So how can you demonstrate to this prospective investor into your business that you really understand the strengths and weaknesses of your competitive set? Another one is about market size, about the size of the market opportunity. And this is a really interesting one because there are a lot of people who have some great ideas to serve quite small niches in which you can build a successful and quite profitable business. But invariably from their perspective, they go, 7 out of 10 businesses we invest in are going to fail. 1 or 2 will go along. We need the one that's going to punch the lights out. And for it to punch the lights out, it needs to be a pretty big market opportunity. So for a lot of investors, they may go, you have a brilliant idea. We are sure you will build a very successful business out of it, but it's too small to move the dial for us. So how big is the scale of the market opportunity that you were looking at? There's more to this stuff. As I say, this is from a book which is coming out next March or April. Still adding to the interview. So if any of you have any interesting stories you want to share with me, that'd be great. And if there's any bits of it you want to pick up on with me separately, I'll put my details up at the end. We can have a chat about them. I've got a final thought. In fact, I have 2 thoughts to leave with you. I've stuck a second one in, which is this. Obviously, I don't get paid for doing this. I mean, having listened to me, you will fully understand why nobody would pay me for doing this. So the what's in it for me is, I'd like you all to open an account with 86400. We've got a waiting list, and we're working through about 2,000 of those a day, but it's going to take us a while to work through that. So if any of you would like to open an account, we will give you a code today. Take one, download the app. It'll take you 2 minutes to open your account. Yeah, I'm slightly biased, but I do think it is the best transactional account in Australia. And my final thought is, I mentioned at the beginning there were a couple of key drivers that seem to permeate successful individuals. Does anybody know who this is? His name is Eric Wennemeyer, and this is a photo taken on the top of Everest. Well, I was told it was on the top of Everest. I think that mountain there is higher, but apparently it is on top of Everest, and Eric Wennemeyer did climb Everest. You go up, so what? They queue to climb Everest. The queue's going up Everest. The youngest person to climb Everest was 14, and the oldest to date, last time I looked, was, I think, 76. So what makes Eric Wennemeyer unique? What makes him unique is he's blind. He was sighted until he was 7 years old, so he could see, and then he had an illness which meant he lost his sight. So he knows what it is to see, has been blind for a long time. I think he was 33 when he climbed Everest. And I had the fortune and the misfortune to speak immediately after him at a conference. And the misfortune was, well, the fortune was he's brilliant. He's an absolutely brilliant speaker. If you ever get the chance to hear him, you do go hear him. The misfortune was he's absolutely brilliant. And I had to follow him. And I generally like following people who are really crap because it just makes me look good by comparison. He was really, really good. But he said something in this presentation which struck me viscerally. I mean, literally, I felt it when he said it. And have you all heard the expression, seeing is believing? Yeah? You're familiar with the expression, seeing is believing. Eric Wennemeyer said, that's not it. He said, it's the wrong way around. He said, the expression should be, believing is seeing. Believing is seeing. What he meant by that was, if you believe in what you are doing, you will see the outcome. Remember I said you'll have lots of ups and downs on the road. But if you believe in what you are doing, you will see the outcome. And there are two things which have come out of the research that I've done so far into what separates successful entrepreneurs from others. Belief is the first one. And the second one is about tenacity. It is those people who keep going when other people give up, which I think is probably a good point for me to give up. Thank you very much.